Those green and orange blooms that you see laying on the trail, those are tulip poplar blooms, which come off a tulip poplar tree. And if you look over here, that big tree right there, that is a tulip poplar tree. And it's a pretty good size one. And there's the canopy up there. So this time of the year, those trees get blooms all over them and they fall down on the trail. They're very characteristic looking. I'm next door to Old Rag Mountain, and if you hike the trail to Old Rag, you'll see tulip poplars even bigger than that one. I've hiked about 2 miles up the Hughes River now. The elevation here is about 1,250 feet. And over here, that's the Hughes River here, with easy access to the water. There's the trail. And over here on the other side of the trail is this little spur that leads over to a real nice campground. You can get backcountry camping permits from the ranger stations. I think last year I hammock camped at this campsite. I'll get some closer pictures of the campsite, but one of the reasons this is such a nice campsite here is this area is very flat. It's got a lot of vegetation too, except for the campsite itself, which, due to constant trampling, the vegetation, isn't growing back. But that's a nice campsite there for an overnight camping. And here's the trail heading upstream. And there's the Hughes River. And that river always has a lot of water in it. It's flowing a little faster than normal right now, but even in the dry months of August and so forth, you can always find water there. Here's a closer view of the campsite next to the Hughes River. This is a large campsite for in this park. So you could get quite a crew in here. It's in a forest with large trees, so you've got a nice shade canopy over your head. And that tree there where you see my trekking poles, and then that next tree to the left, big one, that's where I hung my hammock last year. I hammock camped overnight here, and it was very nice. The only problem camping in these forests like this is there's a lot of owls in here, and at night, starting around midnight, they come out to play, and they'll keep you up most of the night if you let them. Might want to bring earplugs. Here's another little campsite I found. It's about 1/10 of a mile north from the one I just showed you on the video. This one's smaller, but again, it's close to the river. You might be able to hear that in the background. And there's a trail there, a real dim trail leading back somewhere, so there might even be another little camping spot back in there. I've got shorts on, so I'm not going to walk back through there to check that out, but that looks like another little trail going back somewhere. But you could fit a couple of tents in here, and I see I see places where I could hang my hammock. So another possible camping spot. Laying on the trail there, those are the leaves from a tulip poplar tree, and that bloom is a tulip poplar bloom. The green and orange ones I showed you in the earlier video, that one blew off the tree before it had a chance to bloom. But that's what the leaves look like, and that's the blooms before they come out. So I've hiked about 2.5 miles up the Hughes River now, and here is one of the many concrete signposts in Shenandoah Park. The metal band on top tells you what trails what and gives you some rough distances to places. And we're going to turn off on this trail here now. This is the Hannah Run Trail, and for the next couple miles this trail is going to wind its way up the side of the mountain, so it's going to get fairly steep for the next couple of miles. So here we go, Hannah Run Trail. I'm about 3.5 miles into my hike now, and all of a sudden, the elevation here is about 1,600 feet, which isn't very high. All of a sudden, the forest changed from hardwoods to pines. There's a lot of pines up there, and that's usually a dead giveaway that this area that's now overgrown with pine trees used to be cleared out. Now, I read that there was an old farm up here once upon a time, and this is the beginning of a stacked stone fence. There's the trail. There's Hannah Run with plenty of water in it. There's the trail coming up the side of the mountain. So this looks like the corner of a farm, because there's the stacked stone fence going one way, and here's the corner, and here's the stacked stone fence going the other way. So get a little further up here, I'm expecting to find the remains of an old farmhouse. We'll see. Here's a nice spot along the Hannah Run Trail that you could camp out in. You can see it's pretty cleared out. And over here, way down there, is Hannah Run. I think it would be hard to get directly from here down to the Hannah Run, but you could hike downhill a quarter of a mile and find a spot that would be a lot easier to get water. So there's water here. That's the other side of the canyon over there. We'll eventually be walking over there on the return trip. And here's this nice little camping area. This one's, I like this one enough. I think I'm going to store the coordinates of this one into my GPS. The trail's over there, but I wandered over here because there's a bunch of stacked stone piles, which my understanding is when the people that lived up here in these hills, they would clear the fields out for farming, and so they would take the rocks and just pile them up in piles at the edge of the fields. That's a pile right there, and the trail is just behind that pile. And then, if you use a little imagination, you can see that this area could have been a cleared area. There's a few little rocks piled over there. Over that hill down in the canyon is Hannah Run. There's another relatively small pile of rocks, and then here's a great big pile of rocks. So those two piles there were probably the edge of this field. There's another look at that one. And I'm thinking this was an open area that was probably farmed. Now it's got trees and a lot of underbrush. And there's that first pile, and the trail's behind there. Okay, here's the trail. We're still climbing the mountain, and it's been a pretty rough climb the last half a mile. About 4.5 miles into the hike now, and I thought I had missed the old farmhouse, but looky here. It's right off the trail. Here's the trail, and there's the farmhouse, what's left of it. Old stone chimney. There's where the house would have been right there. And there's a couple levels of terracing that was done using stone walls. About 2 levels of terracing there, so I guess they had a little bit of a level yard there with the terracing. Behind the fireplace there, down in the canyon, is Hannah Run, so that would have been their source of water. And over there is another little baby canyon. So the site they chose for the farmhouse was up here on the high ground between these two canyons. I'll mark this spot with my GPS so I can remember where it is. Here's another stand of pretty good sized tulip poplar trees, 3 or 4 of them here. Well, this is shaping up to be about the steepest part of the trail, and it's pretty darn steep. About 4.7 miles into the hike now. The elevation here is about 2,300 feet. That blue blaze mark is marking the trail, and yes, it is on a, you guessed it, tulip poplar tree. Great big one. I'm about 5.5 miles into my hike now, and this is the high point of the hike. This turn here, I'm going to go to the right and continue on this Catlett Mountain Trail for a couple more miles, pick up a few more trails, and wind my way back around in a clockwise fashion back down to the Hughes River. The elevation here is about 2,700 feet. So I've climbed almost 2,000 feet over the last 5.5 miles. Most of it wasn't that steep, but there were some sections that were darn near vertical, pretty darn hard climbing in a couple places. But anyway, this is the high point. It's about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and as they say, it's downhill from here back to the parking lot. Well, I'll be darned. Look what I found on my hip. Huh. A Walther PPKS 380 Auto. Son of a gun. I'm about 6.5 miles into my hike now, slowly working my way down the mountains. And I'm not sure the name of this little creek here. I'll have to look it up when I get home. But these are the headwaters of some creek here. And right over here on this side of the creek is a nice little camp area. The elevation here is 2,500 feet. This is the intersection with Hazel Mountain Trail. So we turn right and head that way down the Hazel Mountain Trail toward Nicholson Hollow. The elevation here is 2560. This trail is actually an old road. There's the center line of the road. There's one of the banks right there. And there's back to the center line, and there's the other bank of the road over there. So this is an old road that is not used as a road anymore. Now it's used as a hiking trail. Here's another nice campsite. It's big. It's on Hazel Mountain Trail. Here's a look around. It's just off the trail. The trail is right there. But anyway, here's another potential campsite. The elevation here is 2,600 feet. We're 7.3 miles into the hike now, and this is a little tricky. This is we're turning right here onto the hot, short mountain trail. Now, normally when there's an intersection like this, there's a concrete post to mark it, and you'll notice that there isn't one here, but if you look down there, excuse me, off down that trail just a little ways, there's the marker. So if you're not paying attention to what you're doing up here, you could easily walk right past that. The elevation here is about 2,600 feet. We're still descending the mountain. We're 8 miles into the hike now. The elevation here is about 2,200 feet. And yes, another big honkin' tulip poplar tree. That's another tulip poplar bloom. That one's a little more mature than the other ones that I took pictures of. That one's was about ready to open up and flower, but it got blown off the tree. So there's another look at a tulip poplar bulb before it completely bloomed. Here's some more stacked stone fencing. I'm going to walk this trail a little bit and try and give you a sense of how much of it there is. I got to be a little careful though, and look where I'm walking. The last time I tried to videotape one of these stacked stone fences, I wasn't watching where I was walking and almost stepped on a timber rattlesnake that was laying in the middle of the trail getting some sun. So sorry for the jerky camera, but I'm trying to watch where I'm walking and film this all at the same time. Hey, it's free. What do you expect? One of these days I might actually buy a camera stabilizer, a stabilized gimbal mount. But the lightest weight one I could find was probably 3 or 4 or 5 pounds, so that's just 3 or 4 or 5 more pounds I have to carry on these hikes. But this fence is not as high now as it was when I first started the video, but it's still going on here. Some of the stones are pretty good size too. I mean, it took more than one person to move some of those stones. Sorry about the jerky camera. I keep looking down, make sure I'm not stepping on any rattlesnakes. The one I almost stepped on never made a sound. It was just perfectly stretched out, long as it could get, laying there in the sun. And at first I thought it was dead, but it was not dead. I backed up and watched it for a few minutes, and eventually it crawled across the trail and into a pile of rocks. There's a little bit of a gap in the fence right there for some reason, and here it picks up again. So, I mean, this goes on and on. So I'm going to stop the camera here. You're probably dizzy from watching all that. But anyway, this section of the fencing, it goes on for quite a ways. Okay, we're back to the Hughes River. Maybe you can hear it in the background there. It's just straight ahead. We're 9.6 miles into the hike now, and we've dropped down to an elevation of about 1,300 feet here. And so we're going to turn left. I'm going to go over to the river and splash my face with water and drink some bottled water, rehydrate and rest for a few minutes. I'll try and get a few shots over there.